Welcome back to the Home Story Cup 9 North America qualifiers. Ladies and gentlemen, spawning here at the top right, or bottom right corner of the map. He's currently down 1 in this best of 3, but I absolutely believe in him to bring it back. It's the red Zerg player from IVD Gaming, ZergZingZing. And his opponent in the upper right. This is not Clarity Gaming, but Crossfire Gaming. The yellow Protoss Practice. So that first game, I gotta be honest, I don't know if that was greed, if it was awkward, but that was not what I expected out of ZergZingZing, not in the slightest. And I don't want to get overly critical for him, but I've seen him provide and play a lot better games in the past, and that one was definitely not one of his strong points. Whether it was too many drones too early, a lack of scouting information, or the fact that he never took the third, all of these things together combined to eventually become his defeat, I suppose we could say. Now, as far as the favoritism for this series goes, I do want to stress we do have a lot of bets currently in the favor of ZergZingZing. Here on the channel, we got a credit system called Partoofs. Sorry, on Base Trade TV, we have a credit system called Partoofs. You essentially get paid to watch. Every 5 minutes you're in the channel, you earn 1 Partoof. Subs earn double that amount, of course, and we have 1,602 wagered currently on ZergZingZing winning this best of 3, but a meager 205 on Practice taking it. So it could go either way, but I think if Practice wins, there's going to be some major upsets and a lot of Partoofs lost. At any rate, Practice didn't even do anything too cheesy that game. I just really want to stress that. A lot of what became his all in the end was because the opportunity presented itself. There was no third base he had to worry about. He didn't have to compete for tech. There weren't upgrades in either player's favor. You can easily tell by just clicking your opponent's units. So, for Practice, I think he just saw an opportunity and seized it. And to that, I gotta say, well played. So before we make it look like it was entirely like ZergZingZing's mistakes that lost him game number 1, we do have to give a little bit of praise to Practice because, well, some Protoss players are very all-in-y types. I don't know a lot about this guy, but he saw the opportunity and he went for it. And one of the few times I'll command an all-in out of a Protoss player. Heh. Rifkin's a Terran. Anyway, he does go for that Zealot once again. The reason I bring this up is because a lot of the times you'll see players actually cancel this if there's no Zerglings or anything coming their way, and they'll instead go for the faster Nexus. We do notice that his Mothership Core was delayed last time, but it is made pretty quickly this time, in tandem with that Cyber Core finishing up with the, starting up with the Warp Tech. But for ZergZingZing, this is a map, this is Frost. I kind of almost wish he would have gone 3 hatch before pool, you know, take it to the greed and push it to the limits. But he's playing on 2 bases again. And last time was awkward, and hopefully this time it'll be a little bit better for him. Still turning out pretty hot, cool.
First blood.
Little guy. Yeah, it doesn't get either of the probes, sadly. But this is pretty much the exact same opener here out of Practice. So again, 3 gateways, the expand. This is once more a build that's kind of meant to pressure the third, poke at it, maybe even kill it if you're given the opportunity. But ZergZingZing having neglected going for a third. Not going to give Practice the chance? That being said, without a third, it makes your mid-game even harder. You're not going to have a lot of larva for units. You're not going to have a lot of economy. He is going to go put that third hatchery down, but it's going to be a while before he's got anything that can really defend it. Once again, he's playing with a couple of Zerglings and Queens, and I don't know, all it's going to take is one big, nice warp-in of 4 Zealots, or sorry, 3 juicy Zealots. Warp Tech's almost finished, by the way. I'll time out perfectly with the pylon. Okay, Queens on 2 this time coming. This is significantly different than Queens on 1. He's trying to focus down the pylon to shut this push down before it gets a chance to get started. Zerglings should be able to kill this out, and the Queens should be able to deal with the Mothership Core. In fact, going to push this back fully and entirely. And while we do have Warp-in starting, it's really important that the Mothership Core does not go down to these Queens. The pylon... okay, it does go down. I was going to say, is he going to ignore that, really? Like, it's just going to open up more warping opportunities, but between the Queens and these Zerglings, he will kill the Zealots, and this time it means he'll actually get this third base up and running. But once again, we got DTs coming out of Practice, and if we're going to be honest, guys, it gets scouted in a big way. If I were this Protoss player right now, the best thing you could probably do is cancel this and go down a different tech path, unless he's really going to dedicate to an all-in. But let's not forget, while Dark Templar can be shut down pretty easily, equally so, Archons can be incredibly good versus Zerg. 3 Archons versus a clump of Zerglings. As long as they're given the shot first, they're usually going to win that fight. But more pylons were placed down, one behind this. Zerglings do clean that up. And third base safely established. Creep does need to spread a little bit better here for ZergZingZing. I know there's a little bit of a lesser priority versus Protoss, but connecting your bases at the bare minimum is kind of a necessity. So we do see some creep spreads starting up down here, and this queen is probably going to go home ASAP. But what we got warped in here? Some more sentries. We don't have a robo, so not going to be a sentry immortal on. He did cancel the Dark Shrine, by the way. Really like that move. Again, you can try and make this work with Archons and Dark Templar, but chances are it's not going to happen. And the big thing too, ZergZingZing, he's already got Spore Callers down. He's rushing out that layer. He'll have Overseers available to him. And we'll see how he handles it. Now that's a lot of sentries, but again, there's no +1. The robo's on the way. If this is going to be a Sentry Immortal follow-up, it's not going to hit at a timing that's too strong. One of the biggest things that makes Sentry Immortal work as well as it does is the fact that it hits when players aren't ready for it. When there's only Roaches and Lings and no Hydralisks. When your opponent's not expecting it coming your way. But unfortunately, with the way this ends up working... Ooh, I actually can be picked off here with Titanite Sentries. With the way this ends up working, though, because he's got a third base and because he had to kind of lickety-split out that layer, it's not going to be problematic. A Hydralisk then comes down immediately. We're going to have double upgrades going at the same time. And while we're going to have a bit of a more macro-oriented game this time, Sentry Immortal's not going to be the correct choice. Now, he's going for the Observer first, actually, so maybe it won't be Sentry Immortal. With just some more sentries at the moment, this is actually perfect for base defense. If he decides to skip this upon scouting the Hydralisk dead, he may go for a quicker Robo Bay. Yeah, so he did get to see that before the Phoenix Hallucination died. So if you see a lot of Hydralisks on the field, there's one of two things you can really do. Either go for Storms or go for Colossus. They're both equally good options, but as we see the the Robo Bay getting started, it's going to be quite some time before they're out and ready. So Practice is going to have to play a really defensive game for the time being. If he had other pylons on the map, he could maybe do a bit of damage with Warpins and Harass. Big shout out to players like Huck, by the way. He's probably my favorite North American to watch do this, but he'll constantly have like a pylon over here and a pylon over here, and he'll have multiple angles to walk Zealots across the map and just constantly apply pressure to mineral lines, so the Zerg player can never really fully commit to a head-on engagement. But 1-1 on the way. We don't have a lot of Roaches available. In fact, did he? No? Okay, just a Roach Warden. Glorial Constitution is finishing up, but as good as Hydralisks are, Hydraling, Hydralisks and Zerglings, this combination is fantastic if you're on creep and if there aren't a lot of Colossus available. Unfortunately, Colossus are kind of super effective versus both of these units. Combined with Sentries, Guardian Shields, and Force Fields, it's going to be very difficult for ZergZingZing to make this work. A big part of why you see a lot of Roaches serve as the regular quote-unquote buffer for Hydralisk guys. They got a lot of health, they hit pretty damn hard, and they're really cheap in comparison to most Zerg units. And that's kind of the emphasis there, cheap. To an extent, they're even more effective than Zerglings. While you might get 100 Zerglings, they all die to one blast of Colossus Beam, whereas the Roaches can certainly take a hit or two. But fourth base on the way here for ZergZingZing, and back at home for Practice. I mean, again, he started his Colossus production. He's got 1 or 2 out, probably for the time of this attack. It's important that he did get that extended thermal lance up quick, though. With the Hydralisks already having that +1 range from Group Spines, it puts them on even footing with Colossus that don't have that upgrade. But of course, once you get extended thermal lance, all of a sudden your range goes from like reachable to unbearable. Kind of like unsiege tank versus siege tank type logic. I kind of wish ZergZingZing would take a 5th too. With how calm the game's been going, and he knows his opponent's just been kind of stuck up in his own base. Taking another base would never really hurt, but he's just playing it focused at the moment. He does have a lot of good creep spread now, worth noting. This is something very critical to this composition. Hydralisks with muscular augments do move faster off of creep, but you're never going to move as fast off of creep as you do on creep. The speed bonus for creep is just a little too much, and every little bit of purple on the map just dictates a better fight area for our Zerg player. Now, he's not actually gone for 2-2 upgrades. A lot of this is because he doesn't have the gas for it, investing in kind of just raw power. And while he does have 123 units in supply, guys, you got to keep in mind, these aren't exactly the most effective units that he has in supply. There's Zerglings, there's Roaches. The Hydralisks are probably the best thing he has going for him, but there's going to be Force Fields that'll segment so much of this off, and we do have Practice coming in front of the side, but this is not a good engagement path. He throws down 4 Force Fields immediately, but ZergZingZing can walk around this if he wanted to, but he's not paying attention. So he's going to wrap in from the backside with a couple more that were designated to hit that third. As the Force Fields start wearing off, he may be able to push in, but this is a bad location to force a fight. As we see the Colossus on the cliff, able to just free fire. If he can get on top of the Colossus, and if he can take those Colossus down, ZergZingZing will win this fight, but even with those number advantage, he's kind of left just hanging. He can't fight. He's forced out a lot of force fields. These sentries have probably got about another 7 left in them, just eyeballing it for the time being, because there are a lot of sentries. But as he pushes forward, he's got to be careful. If his army gets segmented in by the force fields instead of segmented out, this becomes really dangerous. So he just get trapped. He did come in from the right side. This two-pronged attack is a great move. It's a great idea, but unfortunately, with those force fields down, it's just barely not enough. Perhaps focusing a little too much on the third, going to bleed out more roaches, more hydralisks, and only a couple force fields remain. In fact, most of the sentries have died at this point. The Hydras with their brute force might be able to just bully their way in here, but he's busy shooting cannons and gateways, when really he should just be moving into the Colossus. We see him kind of do that with the Hydralisks, and these Colossus are incredibly low, but not dead yet. 2 more remain, and they are trying their best to hold their own, but there's no retreat for them. This weird assimilator with this probe pull are the last form of defense he has, and I think, actually, that probe pull might end up being worth it. While he did lose 20 probes there, the Colossus stand, and the third one comes out. ZergZingZing has been rallying and bleeding out units while this has been going on, and while the army supply is definitely still in his favor, 60 to 29, he cannot fight this force. That was really good control to practice, backing up, using the terrain, using these 2 assimilators to choke out any form of melee units that could have possibly flooded in. But that being said, as cool and as fantastic as that engagement was, we do have 2-2 started up. We got a Spire on the way, whether it be for Corruptors or maybe a complete Mutalist switch. I don't think it'll be for Mutas, probably if not definitely Corruptors, because we don't see him going for Hive Tech for Vipers, so there's not going to be anything to really abduct the Colossus in. But the key thing worth noting, guys, the only reason Corruptors end up being quote-unquote bad is because a lot of the time there's a lot of Stalkers on the ground force to protect the Colossus. They've got Blink, they jump in, the Colossus back up, Guardian Shields go down. But that's not the case. There's not a single Stalker in play. There's not a single Void Ray. There's nothing that are going to keep these Colossus alive versus what could even be as low as 3 Corruptors. He's actually going to come out with 4, and he'll probably make a couple more given the opportunity. But pre-spreading out down here in the south, this is one of the other wonderful advantages of creep, guys. Look how much time Practice is wasting clearing up creep as he comes across the map slowly, rather than marching right into the Hydralisks. That being said, a couple force fields are going to go down, but the Colossus don't have a great space to engage into this time. The Hydras actually have a fantastic surround despite being behind these force fields, and once again, Practice forced to disengage. Now, curiously enough, we look at the resources lost, and it is looking fairly even, but it's worth noting Practice does not have a composition that's going to easily deal with this. Not in any form that is going to make this easy for him. The Corruptors are now out, and it's not something he's had to deal with until now, and 3 Stalkers. A handful of sentries. There's nothing to stop these Corruptors from just annihilating the Colossus. Now this is a cool move. I like this. The War Prism being brought here with a couple Zealots to the 3rd or 4th base, I should say. Might distract ZergZingZing, and hell, it might even kill some drones, but quite frankly, he doesn't have to worry about that. He's got a 3rd behind it. Engages the fight. We do see the Corruptors dive on in here, and this again, that's the last of the force fields. There's no buffer for this whatsoever. The Corruptors are going to take out the Colossus, and the Hydras will clean up any ground forces possibly remaining. Over here on the right side, we got the Zealots absolutely massacring this base, but it is completely irrelevant. Not needing to hold this in the slightest, he actually splits his forces off to come back home to defend. But the Corruptors will take out the War Prism. The Colossus have fallen, and we do have a Hive on the way. So as far as this goes, ZergZingZing might not be aware he could just march across and win at this point, but with only Stalkers remaining, even with Blink, these aren't going to cut it. Not versus Hydralisks with soon to be 2-2. If this was level 3 weapon upgrades and the Zerg player had no armor, these Stalkers could actually tango. But that's not going to happen. GG is called, and we're going to go to game number 3, boys and girls. Tied up now 1-1.